Hi everyone, this is Sunette here for Soul, discussing the process of purifying words. So, the process of purifying words goes hand in hand with the first step in what leads to you actually living a word or words. Our first step was defining the word, our second step, redefining the word, and our third step, living the word. Now, let's get back to step one and this relationship and process between purifying and defining a word. So first and foremost, we can essentially call it a step 1A and a step 1B. Step 1A would be defining the word. Now, let's have a look at an example. And here, I'm also going to use a very personal example in a process that I walked with the word trust. So, firstly, defining the word, which is step 1A, is about getting to know who you are as that word. What does that mean? To get to know who you are as a word is to look into yourself and essentially write out what the meaning of the word is for you now. But not only the meaning, also what memories, emotions, feelings, experiences, ideas, perceptions, even past relationships, what inside yourself opens up like a fountain. Write down everything and anything that comes up in relation to, for example, the word trust. So that here you can understand and see very clearly how you have defined this word within yourself. But not only that, as you write down all that information, you will come to see, realize, and understand how all this information that's coming out from within you in relation to the word, for example, trust, has actually come to define yourself, decisions and choices you make, actions you express, or when you hold back or resist, or how it had come to infiltrate and filter into relationships, everyday life relationships, friendship, family, social, even work colleagues. So, as an example, let me share with you my personal process when it came to trust and how I walked through step 1A, which is defining the word. So for me, in my life experience, so much information coming up within me in relation to this word, and it interestingly enough took me even way back into my primary school years, where I had this initial, shall we say, naive but also innocent relationship to the word trust, in that I realized my initial definition and meaning of this word was, to trust your friends, to trust others. But it was only confined within that particular definition, trusting my friends, trusting others who I feel that I could trust. So that was also another dimension to my relationship with the word trust. I based it on something I feel or experience. And then what did happen was, for example, where I'd have a small circle of friends. And it was initially just in total, the three of us. And, as young kids, we do gossip. And I was sharing with them some personal experiences and information about, how I felt the in crowd was bullying me, but more so, because I was someone who was bullied a lot in primary school for my red hair and freckles. And so obviously as a child, that did hurt me, and my only way of dealing with with that hurt or those emotions, was to kind of get back at them, but in like a really nasty way. And that nasty way was gossiping about them and finding fault and flaws and wrong things and really going nasty and bad. And then I felt that I could trust my friends to share these things with them, and they wouldn't say anything or tell and keep it a secret. But interestingly enough, what then happened is I didn't know that those friends had another agenda, which is that they wanted to be part of the in crowd. And so to become part of the in crowd, they told, those people what I said about them and how I feel about them and see them and experience them, and that, then they also flared it up in saying that I'm saying that to everyone, and them I'm trying to turn everyone against them. And oh my goodness, it was quite a debacle, leading to me sitting alone during breaks. But upon reflecting on all of that, it's again, it wasn't so much purely, for example, my friend's fault. It was also my own in my definition of trust. It was completely skewed in the sense of, defining trust based on a feeling purely, an experience, defining trust in sharing secrets, defining trust in me sharing the nature of secrets where I am actually really exceptionally nasty and spiteful and manipulative. So, it's kind of like creating a circle of trust in the context of, I want to share this gossip so that I can be this nasty, manipulative, really spiteful person in secret. So there was a couple of those memories that, interestingly enough, came up. And then from there, also throughout my life, there were many moments of where I felt my trust was betrayed, also pertaining to like secrets and keeping secrets, and especially in moments where, I, for example, shared something with another person, asking them that I trust you to not tell anyone this, because I'm working through something and this is really personal, and then they would say something to someone else. But obviously within that, me not considering that they should have, because, I at times needed some help with certain things and I wouldn't have been able to deal with it myself. So here's just an example of how far back as well you can go into yourself and have a look at what memories, experiences, emotions, feelings shape your definition of a word. Because there we're now getting to what it means to purify a word. Purifying a word is releasing yourself from all this past information, data, memories, relationships, experiences, movements, perceptions, ideas, beliefs. Because as long as all of that exists within you in relation to a word, it becomes rather challenging for you to redefine the word, which is in step 2. Redefining a word where you decide to create a self-definition for you in relation to a word in a way that supports you, that contributes to yourself, your life, your relationships. So it's almost it's also quite in line with the saying or the statement, for the new to be born, the old must go. And so therefore your old definitions, experiences, memories of a word has to be released within yourself. Now, obviously here, it's not like a release as in you can sit in one moment or a night or a couple of hours and work through all this information and then magically it all just releases and almost disappears within yourself, becomes non-existent. And there you're just this complete blank slate, that can write on yourself, within yourself, through writing new definitions for the word trust. No, it doesn't work like that. But how it does work is, similar to myself, is I first sat down, defined the word for myself, really went in deep into myself, looking at how many memories, conversations, statements, quotes, those also I found inside myself, where people would say, trust has to be earned, don't just trust anyone, trust no one. So, even all of those things also existed in me. So what I first did was just write down a blueprint for myself, just making short, concise statements or little paragraphs of memories that came up within me. Even movies, it's quite extensive how many movies or series today, you can even listen to the dialogue, how many times in one series episode they would say, trust me, trust me, trust me, so it's like the whole misalignment of trust purely being projected onto others. And it was quite extraordinary for me, in my redefinition process to ask myself, how can trust become a part of me first and foremost? My relationship with myself, that's got nothing to do with anyone else. And I'll get there in a moment, but for now, the blueprint, which is step 1A, just write down all the information as concisely but as specifically and as detailed as possible. Then we go to 1B, which is purifying the word. Now, here in this process, what I did was I looked, this is also what's quite nice, within this process, and obviously with maturing and aging in my life, that I can look at those memories and see and understand it with much more reasoning, clarity, and common sense. Where I could see that, that whole play out in that memory and still harboring resentment or emotion and anger toward my friends then is not valid. I'm imprisoning myself in my own memories with my own emotions, and it's not the way I want to live. So then what I would do is I would walk through all that information in a way of letting it go, making peace with it. Seeing what I can instead learn from those memories. Initially it was about the point of trust, where I felt my trust was betrayed. But looking into it deeper, I realized it wasn't so much about that as it was about me. There was a different way where I could have resolved those moments, those experiences, such as first dealing with my own experiences, confronting the bullies, reaching out, asking for support, rather than me turning equally as bad as them by bullying them inside myself or in little circles of gossip. So essentially, I realized I was no different to them because of the way that I handled those moments with spitefulness, emotion, resentment, manipulation, things like that. I just did bullying in a more vocal way than the more upfront, real time, visible way that they did. And that also just didn't give me a nice feeling or experience. So I slowly but surely also, any statements or quotes and things that also came up within me of like trust no one and trust has to be earned and all of those things, I looked at where did they come from, why did I just believe it, how did I just accept all of that, but overall, everyone, as I said, purifying a word is just for a moment to go through all of the information that's harbored inside yourself, in your mind, along with all the emotions, and just going through it, releasing it, letting it go, so that you can get yourself to a blank slate of asking yourself, okay, who am I in relation to this word? Purely only just me with myself. Me, myself, and I. All right. So what I would also suggest, which also helped me, was to walk the step 1 A and B and step 2 together in the sense that when I started then the process of redefining the word, asking myself, what does the word trust mean for me in my relationship with myself? I could still sometimes see, there are other ideas and memories and perceptions of the word would come up inside myself, and then I would just release it, let it go. Releasing, letting go, a nice technique that you can use just to breathe it in and breathe it out. Just like envision the memory like drifting off and drifting away in your mind. That's quite empowering and self-strengthening, doing something as simple as that, because sometimes, memory would come up and it would just stay there in your head and you start thinking about it and becoming emotional about it and kind of going to a spin inside yourself, when instead of letting that memory captivate you and keep you imprisoned within the past and your own emotions, like just take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And it's almost like your out breath like blows that memory away from your present moment, where you instead say to yourself, you know what, I'm right here in the present, in this moment, where I'm creating a blank slate for myself in relation to a word. I don't want these memories and these past experiences and all these ideas and stuff to interfere with me giving myself a window of opportunity, a moment in this present, the gift, to redefine myself in relation to a word. So that's also something quite nice that worked for me, while I was writing out this new definition, my redefinition of a word, and so myself. And also to remember, when you get to the process of living the word, sometimes old memories are still going to pop up, some ideas, perceptions, feelings, experiences. But again, all you do is you just remind yourself that no, you're not accessing your old definition of the word. You're living your new definition. And you just remind yourself, what's my redefinition of this word? How am I living trust for me in my relationship to myself, first and foremost? So then, with now understanding my blueprint and also having walked the process of purifying myself from this word, I then went into the redefining of asking myself, how can I learn to trust me? What does it mean to trust myself, first and foremost? And then how can I live that in my everyday life, in my relationships with other people? Eventually, I'll get into explaining and defining that a bit more. But, eventually, what became interesting in my process of redefining and living the word trust into self-trust is that instead of me just trusting others based on a feeling, I have had many a consequential play out by just trusting someone based on something I feel inside myself, based on an energy movement that comes up within me. Where instead of that, what the gift that I received from my redefinition of the word trust, and so self-trust, was to rather be an example for others of what it means to trust yourself. So I would instead assist and support others in a process, in a journey into and as the redefinition of trust and self-trust, so that as I trust me and as they trust themselves, we have assisted and supported one another in the one and most important place where trust should exist, and that is within ourselves. We always tend to project trust first and foremost out there toward everything and everyone else. But we've never asked ourselves, what does it really mean to trust me? To live that for me, as me, and rather be an example of that for others so that I can assist and support others in transferring that gift of what it means to trust themselves. We've all done this. We've taken trust and just kind of thrown it at each other, but never inverted it, introspected it, investigated, and emerged and birthed ourselves as individuals as the word trust and self-trust. All right. So you see, even within what you'll notice in your redefining, your defining and purifying of a word, is that you'll notice how in none of what comes up inside yourself you exist, in the sense of how you have lived trust or self-trust for yourself in your relationship with you. It's always been about everything everyone else, quotes, statements, sayings, series, movies, memories, things like that, and obviously emotions within it and all sorts of movements. But in none of that is you and your everyday life and how you live, in decisions and choices you make, and how you express yourself. All right, so now getting to the redefinition of the word. In the redefinition of the word trust, how I defined it for myself was, for example, I had a very hard time making decisions, where I would, when it even came to something as simple as someone asking me to quickly go to the shops with them, or take a day off and go somewhere else, what would always be coming up in my mind is this inner conflict, because I would be thinking of so many other things, so many other people, times, deadlines, responsibilities, not knowing at all where I am within that decision. So even there, I realized that in making decisions and choices, I never ever considered myself. I would always be thinking about wanting to please and be there for that person, so therefore I would want to go. But then I have to please and be there for so many other people, so many other responsibilities and things that I need to attend to and get to, that would create the inner conflict. So I was thinking about so many other people and things instead of taking a moment for myself and adding myself as consideration within all of those decisions, and people and responsibilities and obligations and times and deadlines. So my first decision of trust was learning to trust myself within decisions that I make. So any and every opportunity that stepped forth in my everyday life where I could practice making decisions and including myself within those decisions, I would start building my trust within myself of when it comes to assessing all the outflows, play-outs, consequences, time, responsibilities, obligations, people, and my relationship to everything and everyone. And I mean, yes, even to this day, there are moments where I'm in such an inner conflict with decision making, but throughout the years building my trust within this process, I've become more and more confident in decision making, in not going into that frantic, oh my God, I don't know what decision to make, I don't know where to go, what to do, what not. I used to go frantic, like stress. I would break out a sweat in having to make decisions. It was extraordinary to see the absolute almost fear, anxiety, and petrification that would come up, and eventually try and manipulate the situation so that someone else can make the decision for me. So here is an example for yourself as well, where you can find somewhere in your life. Start with one point. Keep this process simple, because once I started grounding myself within making the decision, within trusting myself in the decision-making process, I then started expanding my awareness of living trust when it came to many other things in my life, in my relationships, in even my own process with my thoughts, my emotions, where I would start practicing learning to trust myself in moments of having a conversation with another person, that I don't bring in my thoughts and emotions, but I am as stable and clear and insightful and reasonable as possible. So, I mean, there were so many doors that opened up and where I could practice living this word, trusting myself. And over time, what was fascinating is people would come up to me asking me, how are you so good at making decisions? How can you be so grounded and stable in this situation and that situation? How do you do it? What's happened? And so now whenever I assist and support another person, I always also bring in this point of trust. You've got to walk a process. It takes practice, but more so that you've got to develop that trust within yourself to be able to change, to do the certain thing in this way or that way. All right, so here what I would suggest in your process of possibly even walking this word trust with us is to have a look at starting your writing process, your blueprint, which is step 1A of defining the word. Get everything out, put it on paper. Step 1B is purifying the word, just letting all those memories go inside yourself. You can do it in how I suggested, as like taking a deep in breath and in the out breath. Just see those memories go. Just see those quotes and statements and conversations, discussions, movies, any and all the information and data, and you just let it go. Till you're like at a nice blank slate within yourself, where you just feel clear within you, and then you start writing the redefinition, which is step 2. And have a look at considering this redefinition. Very important that you don't again jump into all your past definitions of trying to define it to trusting others or other things or other moments or experiences or feelings. It's about, what does self-trust mean for me in my relationship with myself, in moments in my everyday life? How can I live this word as a personal venture to me? And then start having a look at where are moments or points or things that you do in your everyday life that you'd like to develop self-trust in. It can be about For example, when you're learning new things, you've realized that you tend to give up and give in even before you've even started. Then you can redefine your initial phase or process of living the word trust as trusting yourself that you will not give up. Even if the resistance comes up or the wanting to give up and give in comes up, you push through it and you start, you learn, you get in there.